Hi, Kennedy.
Okay. Holy moly.
Good morning, everybody. Looks like we've still got some folks jumping on, so I'm going to give everybody just another minute or two, and then we'll get started. All right, well, good morning again, everybody. We do still have some folks joining, but we'd like to try and get you all out of here before lunch today. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Dan Reese, and I'm the program manager of the Local Park Grants Program here at Texas Parks and Wildlife. Welcome. Everyone is here on the call this morning because your organization, or maybe one you're working with or affiliated with, was listed as a recipient of a directed grant or legislative rider in the General Appropriations Act of the recently concluded 89th Texas legislative session. So these grants will all be administered through the Recreation Grants branch here at Texas Parks and Wildlife. So congratulations. We're all very excited to be working with you and partner with you on the successful completion of your local park projects.
Thank you.
So here is what we have in store for everybody this morning. Again, I think we'll be able to get this wrapped up by noon today. We do ask that everyone please stay muted while we're presenting, and please turn your cameras off while we're presenting as well. We just want to limit any potential bandwidth issues or technical issues. We do encourage everyone to ask questions. So while we're presenting, feel free to just type your question into the chat. We'll try and address those real time. But if not, we'll have periodic breaks during the webinar, and we'll open the floor up and address any questions at that time. We do plan on recording this presentation this morning. And so that recording, as well as a slide deck, will be available to everyone as a resource. Additionally, we'll be collecting all the questions and our answers, and we'll ensure we make those available to everyone as well.
And I just need to be listening because it's about our grant. Oh.
Okay, got it. Yes. Okay, got it. Got it. Got it.
Okay, so first we'll cover the basic administrative guidelines for your new grant. We'll cover the next steps, the overall timeline for everything. And then Blake Powers, our business systems analyst, will jump on, and Blake will cover all things Recreation Grants Online, or ARGO. ARGO will be your portal that you'll use for submitting your application. And then once your grant goes active, you'll use the same portal for administering your grant. I know looking over the list of recipients and a lot of the folks that are on the call this morning, many of you have experience in Argo. If you don't worry about that. We'll work with you and make sure you're comfortable with the system before you get started. Then we'll cover all of your fiscal requirements. So our fiscal team will be joining us at that point. And then after a quick 10-minute breather, the local parks team will jump on and we'll cover all of your programmatic requirements. And then at the end, we'll open the floor up for questions and answers. But again, please feel free to type your questions into the chat as we're going along. Also, please don't consider this morning your only opportunity to ask questions. Each grant will be assigned a specific grant coordinator, and that grant coordinator will be your primary point of contact throughout your grant superior performance. So you'll all be hearing from your grant coordinator in the coming days. So if you do have a question that's maybe more specific to just your project or your project scope, it may be better to address those with your grant coordinator as opposed to this morning's webinar. Okay, so I think before I get too much further, I'd like to introduce everyone to our director, Dana Lagarde. So I know many of you have probably had an opportunity to meet or work with Dana in the past, but Dana is with us this morning. So Dana, you want to say hi?
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Well, good morning, everybody. On behalf of Parks and Wildlife, we want to welcome you to today's online grant workshop. And I'm really excited to see so many people on today. I see a lot of names I recognize from the past, and I see a lot of new names. So I wanted to let you know that so I've been here with Rec Grants for 23 years now, and this is the largest and most, I guess, the most projects we've ever had with directed grants before. And so it's very exciting, and I want everybody to know that our local park grant staff has been working diligently to prepare for this, and they are going to be available to help shepherd you through the grant process along the way throughout your project. But please be patient with us if there's a few things that we have to look up, or if we can't answer all your questions today, because this is also a very big lift for our team as well. But we're excited to be partners with you. And if there is anything that I can do for you, please feel free to reach out to me. So congratulations and good luck.
Thanks, Dana. All right, so now we'll start to get into some of the basics. Again, I know a lot of you have familiarity with some of our programs here in Rec Grants. For those of you that have applied for and successfully administered a local park grant project in the past, these grants will be administered very similarly to a regular local park formula grant, but there are a few differences. The first being the matching requirement. And so unless you have specifically heard from someone regarding a match requirement for your grant, these grants do not have a match requirement. If you're unsure about your specific project, please reach out to us and we would be happy to clarify that for you. Your funds will be distributed through a reimbursement basis. So you will be spending the money up front, and then you'll submit your proof of expenditures to our fiscal folks. And then after a successful audit, we'll be reimbursing you for those expenditures. There is the possibility that certain projects may be eligible for an advance in funds. And our fiscal team will cover both the reimbursement process as well as advances in a little more detail once they jump on. All of these grants will require an application in Argo. For those of you who have completed a local park grant application in the past, don't worry, we've pared them back significantly. And so we're hoping the time commitment won't be quite the same for these directed grants. Because these grants aren't available to the general public, they've all been specifically listed in the General Appropriations Act. The applications aren't publicly available, so we will be initiating your applications internally, and then you'll receive a notice in the next week or so once your application is available, and then you can get in there and start populating your information. As far as the application itself, after the 10-minute break, the local park team will jump on and we'll cover the basics of what to expect with the application. Okay. So while there's not a hard deadline for submitting your application, we do encourage everyone to try and get them in by December the 15th. So at least by the end of the year. If you take a little longer or need a little longer, that's okay. We'll work with you. We're just encouraging submittal by then just to ensure that you've got adequate time to complete your project prior to the expiration of your funding. In terms of your pre-agreement site visit, so that's a required component for all local park grants. Most of these have already occurred. So some of you may have already seen some of us out wandering around some of your parks. So we have gone out and seen all your parks. They look great, but we're looking forward to partnering with you to make them even better. So based on the application submittal at the end of the year, we're anticipating that the majority of these agreements will be issued no later than April of 2026. If you're able to get your application submitted sooner, that will just go ahead and start the agreement workflow process and review process internally. So an earlier submittal will result in an earlier grant agreement. If for whatever reason you're specifically on a time crunch, just let your grant coordinator know, please, and we'll do everything we can to work with you to meet your anticipated timelines. Okay. Again, we mentioned that the agreement date of April 2026. All of these grants will have a period of performance that will run through April 15th of 2030. Because the funding does permanently expire at the end of fiscal year 30, unfortunately, a time extension won't be available. So, let us know what your overall timeline looks like as soon as you can, and we'll work with you. Okay, I think that's probably it for me for now. I'll jump back on quickly after the 10-minute break. But at this point, Blake, I'll throw it over to you and you can cover a little bit of Argo.
Thanks, Dan. As Dan mentioned earlier, my name is Blake Powers. I am the systems analyst for Recreation Grants. What that entails is primarily technical support for the Recreation Grants online system. It looks like a lot of you are already in the system and have experience, so hopefully this will just be a quick refresher. For those of you that don't, this is not a training. There are lots of resources online that will show you how to do pretty much anything in Argo that you need to do. So I'm just going to walk through the bullet points today because I know there's a lot to digest, and probably y'all may have based on the experience, I don't know that y'all will need as much review, but if you do, I'll show you where the resources are. So going through the system here, just to review what Recreation Grants Online is. It is our portal where we typically manage projects all the way from the application stage to the project closeout stage. The applications themselves belong to organizations rather than individual users. Because of that, you're going to need an organization set up in the system, and I'll quickly go over that resource here in a minute. Users interface with applications based on their role on the application. What that means is that you're going to need a sponsor administrator role on the application itself if you're going to submit reimbursement requests, or if you're going to be able to upload signed grant agreements, and that type of thing. If you're performing in a project manager or official capacity on the project, the right role for you is sponsor administrator. If you're just entering data, so if you're tasked with, say, entering the data in an application or a quarterly report, but not submitting it, then the sponsor staff role will be adequate for you. The idea behind the sponsor administrator role is there is some authority or some representation in that role that you're capable of discerning when something's ready to submit to our team to review. Additionally, sponsor administrators for an organization can add and remove users. We're going to quickly look at that in just a moment, but I'm going to run through the slides and then I'm going to run through Argo. Couple things that you're going to want to do in Argo. Obviously, we're going to quickly go through the application process. It's a little bit different this time. For those of you with experience, normally you would log into the system and you would apply. You would click apply now and you would find the grant opportunity. In this case, what will happen is Dan and his team are going to give me a list of organizations and I'm going to create the application for you. So it will be in your task list once I get that list. I'll work with the grant coordinators and Dan will try to send out some type of message to let you know that the application is there and available for you to complete. We might either send that out through the system itself or have individual coordinators reach out to you. But we'll talk about that. I don't exactly know what the timeline for that is yet, but hopefully it will be soon. And again, I'll defer to the program team on that. But when those applications are created, the nice thing is you won't have to actually go in and click apply. It'll just be available and you can go in and fill it out and submit it. The next step really after your application gets submitted and processed by our team and they're going to make sure everything's in there that they need, it's going to go into what we call the agreement workflow. And really what that is, to quickly distill that, is we have to set your organization up financially so that you can receive payments. We also have to prepare the grant agreement for your organization's project. So the next thing that would happen after you submit your application and go back and forth with your grant coordinator once it's in the agreement workflow is we'll be basically adding tasks to the project in what's called the project elements form. That's really just a place where you can go upload documents. So what will happen is your grant coordinator will add a task to the project elements form. Your organization will receive an email that a task is available and ready for you to complete, and you can log in and complete that task. And that task is essentially uploading some type of document. The standards for everyone are the TENS form and the direct deposit form, although you don't have to have direct deposit. The TENS form is essentially making sure you're in good standing with the comptroller there, and the direct deposit form is if you want funds directly deposited for your organization. Those financial funds are pretty common for all of our projects. And then past that, there may be some project-based forms that your grant coordinator adds there that are required for completion, depending on the nature of your project. And we'll quickly go through this form, but there's a resource in the system that shows you how to use this form, and I'll show you where that is. The next thing that you'll do is once your project gets rolling and there is a grant agreement to sign, you're going to be using the agreement signatures form to upload your grant agreement. In the past, the rider grant agreements have not been automated in the system, but this year they will be since there's a significant number of projects. So this isn't a thing you're going to run into for at least a few months here. But what will happen is when your project has a grant agreement ready for you to sign, you'll get an email from the system. You'll log in, you'll open the agreement signatures form, and there's this handy dandy link to agreement PDF button that will generate the main portion of the agreement. And then any attachments that are unique to your project or that are required outside of this document will be down here. Some of those you'll have to click on and download and then scan them all together and upload as one agreement in the system. Pretty standard stuff for those of you that have done this before. The next thing that will be present in the system is after your project is active, you'll be required to complete quarterly reports. Those quarterly reports will generate automatically on the first of the month after the reporting period ends. So quarter four's report will generate on January 1. Quarter one's report will generate on April 1. Quarter two's report will generate on July 1, and then quarter three's report will generate on 10/1. That cycle goes every year, pretty self-explanatory there. They're due by the 30th of the month. So if the report generates on the 1st of January, it's due by the 30th of January, 1st of April, due by the 30th of April, so on and so forth. And then the payment reimbursement request, our fiscal team is going to get into this, but these are submitted into the system. There's a technical guide to help you understand how to do this in the system from a technical perspective, but there's also some element of this that's programmatic. And so our fiscal team will be talking a little bit about the programmatic part of that in terms of what they're looking for. But there is a guide to show you how to create a reimbursement, what you have to fill out, and then how to submit it. This is a link to everything that you'll need to know, and the stuff that I'm going to reference here shortly here. I'm going to show you the screen in Argo and just kind of orient you on where some of these resources are so we can get you all rolling. But this link on the slide, which will be available, is a pretty easy way to get to the areas you need to get to. Okay, so I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to share the Argo screen here. And so this is the Argo screen. Even without an account, there is a button here for resources. Okay, so even on the login screen, you don't even have to log in. All of the Argo resources are available here. Okay, usually you're looking at this quick start guide, and this quick start guide is really for applicants. Okay, this is designed for people that are applying for a grant. You won't probably need to know. Now, some of you who have not set up a sponsor organization yet, this is going to be a pertinent link for you, how to request and access for your sponsor organization and create a sponsor administrator account. That's going to be relevant for those of you that don't have an Argo account. This would be relevant as well. What you'd want to do is add users to your organization before we create the application. A little more complicated after the application gets created, because in Argo, if you add somebody to your organization, it doesn't add them to past documents that have already been created. It's a little bit different way to go about that, but I'll cover that basically. You won't need to view and apply for an available grant opportunity, because a rider project is not available to the public. It's only available to those folks that have received the award. So this might be more pertinent, how to add and remove users to a grant application. Okay, so if you do come into the system and you add people to your organization after you've created the application, you'll simply have to go add them to the application. This tells us about how to view, edit, save the forms in a grant application. Pretty self-explanatory. The big thing is that Argo requires all the forms to be completed without error before you can submit it. Okay, and we'll go over how you know you have an error in a form, although this really takes you through that. This is how to submit. You will have to submit this grant application. There's not a deadline per se in the system set up. So you will be able to submit after the December date that Dan had talked about. Obviously, though, for programmatic reasons, it may be desirable to get yours in ahead of time on that. However, this talks about how to move it into submitted so that our team knows it's there. And this is how to create a PDF or a print version of the grant application. So this guide really covers the stuff for the application. But the good thing is there is a guide, a one-stop shop here for the main things that you're going to need to know how to do to manage a grant in this portal. Okay, it's the project elements form we talked about. Okay, and when you do click these forms, they're very thorough. They've got screenshots. How do I know when I have a task? It shows you the email you're going to get. What do? I come in here. This shows you how to search for your application independent of status, and then how to access the form, how to upload items. So all of the resources are built out to be very thorough that way. How to sign your grant agreement. That'll be the next thing in order. And then there are two documents here. One is the payment guidance document. Our fiscal team will talk a little bit more about that, but this is the programmatic and fiscal elements of a payment, right? And then the technical guidance really just covers, hey, how do I create the payment in the system? How do I clear the errors? How do I submit it? What are the steps in the system I'm going to be looking for, like submitting the certification letter, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. This is this guide is meant for co-op sponsors, so it really won't pertain to y'all. The quarterly reports guide will show you how to submit your quarterly report. And then again, Dana talked about, it sounds like your projects are not really going to be extending too much or worrying about the revision elements of the grant, or the amendment elements rather. But if that does come up, these resources are here and your grant coordinator can assist you with that. Okay. Let's log in real quick, and I'll show you really, what you're going to be looking at here. And then I'll pass y'all along if you have any questions. So what will happen here is, this is a sponsor administrator account I've created for our fictional town and city of Ireland. When you log in, and after the application is created and you've been notified, it's going to be in your task list. So you're not going to be clicking here on view available opportunities. You're just going to be going down to open tasks. There's a new handy feature in the system where you can sort this in a way, and I would choose date received ascending, and that's going to put my rider application right at the top there, right? Because that's been the most recently created document for me, right? When you open this, okay, for most of you, again, this is familiar, but these are the application forms, okay? There's a lot of them, but a lot of the data has been pared down from local parks normal application, right? This is really just information you're going to want to read here about timelines, etc. It has contacts for your team. You're going to have a specific grant coordinator, but this is really designed to show you the contacts for the local park group. These have changed a little bit. We've added some folks. So just know that this may not be the entire list always. It's the list that's current as of the time that the application gets created. It also has links to contact me or to contact our support line. As you go through this application, there's a couple of ways that the application can appear in the forms menu, okay? And this is kind of what it's talking about. This orange area means you've got an error on a form, okay? This means that the form's good to go, and this means you've got some things to fix on the form before you can submit it. The blank piece of paper means it hasn't been opened or saved yet, right? So all of these are going to have to look like this right here, and then you'll be able to submit it when the time comes. You'll simply choose status changes and then application submitted. If there's an error in your application and it's not cleared, the system will come back and return. It will show you where the errors are, and you'll have to go fix those. So really, the only other thing I'd look at, because some of you may go through this pretty quickly, when you do get to the project elements form, again, it's a fairly, let me see if I can find another. It works the same for pretty much all of our projects. I'll just look for another one here. This is what the form looks like, okay? And in this case, I've had a couple of tasks dropped in here. These won't be the names of your tasks, but this X tells me I have not done anything for these. This little icon tells me I've already uploaded something and the team has not reviewed it yet, okay? So if I get an email saying you've got to do something here, the biggest mistake people make is they come here and they click choose file, but you've actually got to click this edit button first. You'll notice then I have a save button that appears. Then I can upload a document. I can save it, and the icon will change to orange, okay? If the team reviews it and it's not accepted, I'll get an email saying I need to log in and change something. What I need to change will be logged right here in the modification required comments box, and I'll simply do the same thing because it will return to a red X, and I'll upload my next one. When it's been approved, it'll turn to a green check mark, and I'll have an email from the system verifying that. So that's really as far as I want to take y'all today in terms of the specific screens, because there's a lot to cover for y'all outside of Argo, and the information, like we looked at, is available in the resources. But if anybody has any just overall quick questions, I'm available to let you know. There's actually one other thing that I want to show everybody that's helpful. It's in the project elements form, but this is useful information. So if you're not familiar with the system, when you've got something to do, your application is going to show up, or your project is going to show up in your task list. But what happens when I don't have something to do, but I still need to find my project, right? For example, I want to create a reimbursement request. Well, when my project's active, it's not necessarily going to show up on my task list, because that doesn't mean that there's something immediate to do. So in order to find any project that I've been associated with, either the main project, a payment associated with a project, or a quarterly report, I simply click on the tab, that I want to search, I make sure to click the clear button, right? Because most of you don't have enough things where you need to limit your results. You just want to see what you have, right? And then I'm going to click search, and everything I'm associated with is going to show up in this screen, okay? So you'll notice these ones in active project, these are the ones that are not going to be in my task list. So knowing how to navigate the system and search for your project is important, because if I want to create a reimbursement request for my project, I'm going to have to pull it up and then do so here. Okay. So that's as far into the weeds I want to get y'all. Just how to fill out the application form, where it's going to be, how to use that project elements form, and then how to find your project when it doesn't appear in your my tasks list. I think that's a good start for everybody. So feel free to let me know if y'all have additional questions. Likewise, if there's nothing immediate today, I'm always available. My contact information is available on the presentation. I see we have a question here from Jing. Go
Yes.
ahead, Jing.
I have a quick question because I was following your instruction and working on my grant online, and I searched my task, but I did not see that the writer's grant application show under my task.
Yeah, it's not created yet. That was covered earlier in the presentation. I haven't created those yet because I haven't got a full list from the team.
Okay, great, thank you. So do you know like when we expected to see that in my task?
I don't actually. You'll get an email from either the system or your grant coordinator when those are ready. But I have to get the list and make sure that I create the projects. I would imagine it will be here in a couple of days, but I don't want to jump ahead too far. It could be I'll be out next week, so if it's not within the next couple of days, it would be that last week of October.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Anybody else? Quick questions? Okay, sounds good. I'm going to pass it back to Dan and the fiscal team. Thank y'all very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcy Kalunga, and I'm a member of the Rec Grants fiscal team. I'll be covering some of the fiscal tasks here today. When you submit a request for payment, one of the members of our fiscal team listed here will review what you sent us and will contact you if we need additional info. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions regarding your reimbursement request or how to go about it. We'll be more than glad to help you put it together. And Brian Lofgren is the fiscal manager. Feel free to contact him with any questions or concerns. So you've gotten your grant agreement, you've gotten your notice to proceed, and you'll go into the system, into your project elements. And if you've already been doing grants with us, you're probably familiar with some of these elements. And we'll reach out to you if there's anything that needs to be completed. For reference, we have these forms that need to be completed. So the AP 15210, we strongly encourage you to fill out a direct deposit form so that your funds can be deposited instead of a check. This is the form I was talking about, the AP 15210. We realize some of you have done this before and are familiar, so I'll try to be brief, but go through some of the things that I'm going to briefly touch on. This is the AP 10s direct deposit. It's here in the project elements form. If there are any other tasks to be completed, they will show up here for you to do. And I will pass it on to Daryl here to cover. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Daryl Edgar. I'm in the fiscal resource group. I'm going to go through some of the fiscal tabs, and if you have a question, you can type it in the chat box and we'll get back to you. as Marcy was talking about, the AP10s and the direct deposit, if you submit a direct deposit, that typically will go through on your second reimbursement. The comptroller will submit a check beginning with your first RP, and then your direct deposit will come on the second RFP. But you can always contact us, and we can look that information up for you. So the next slide will be the appraisal process. So if any grantee is purchasing land or land acquisition, the appraisal for that property will be sent to us, and you'll need to submit that appraisal, whether you acquire your land for your project through purchase, donation, or city-owned non-parkland. And please refer to the project element section to see if an appraisal is required. Here is the project elements form or page in Argo that will have the task listed if you are acquiring land through reimbursement. So the reimbursement process requirements, the key items in the reimbursement package would be to fill out the request for payment. Construction pay apps should be broken out into the construction elements, and the invoices and proof of payment, if there's any labor, force account, equipment documentation, and the certification form. I will add that for contractor payment applications, if you could please group the expenses such as concrete, demolition, put those in, try to tie those to the grant element that is decided with you and your grant coordinator. So if there's concrete, demolition, rebar, you could group that into something as a sidewalk. So we could tie that easily back to your budget. And something easy would be, you know, playground equipment into the playground grant element. In addition, there's spots for invoice numbers and payment reference. So the invoice number, you could put pay app 1, pay app 2. That would be easily identifiable to us, so we could tie that back to the pay app. And if it's just an invoice, please put something from the invoice that we can determine that it ties back to. And then the payment reference, you can add a check number or an ACH identifier. The guidance documents for reimbursement request. Once logged into Argo, you can find the technical guidance for payment reimbursement requests and recreation grant payment guidance documents that will be great resources to have at your fingertips. It is located at the top of your Argo screen. If you click that, there's several programs. There's fiscal resources, local park resources. They're great resources where you can find forms that I'm about to go through. When you click Argo 2020 resources, it'll take you to this screen, and you can click on fiscal resources. That will take you to forms such as advanced requests, any labor, force account documentation, employee time logs, that sort of thing. So the budget summary typically done on the front end of your project is an integrated form, and it will auto-populate with the approved budget elements of the project. So when you're filling out your RFP, there will be a drop-down menu that will identify construction, professional services, that sort of thing. That will tie directly back to your budget summary. So we look at that to determine, is this expense in your budget process? And if it goes outside of what we interpret, we will usually ask your grant coordinator, and then we can go from there. This is the RFP billing matrix. This is completed in its entirety. Submit each reimbursement, and we'll need to tie back to the approved cost categories and the approved budget summary. So you will complete this document from the contractor pay app invoice and detailed cash receipts. Typically, you'll submit the pay apps that correspond with the RFP, and then any checks that are paid for that invoice or that pay app. And we'd like to see that it was paid and processed by the bank. P-card and EFT related transactions require a bank statement, credit card statement to show payment has been made cleared using sponsor resources. Cash transactions require petty cash transaction log to show where the cash came from. This is the daily work record. The force account, timesheets, and payroll registers are required for projects with approved personnel budget lines. And one item we typically see is where the labor will not have identifiable like what they worked on. If you could please put that in the activity line, or just showing what this person worked on for as many hours and what their pay rate is. Equipment, if approved in the budget summary, equipment used in project scope is to be logged for the time at the approved applicable rate. Contractor payment applications. Control items that are audited to verify allowable costs. The payment application date, the payment application number, contract total amount completed. And on pay apps, typically the grantee will withhold a certain retainage fee for the contractor to determine whether they'll hold it till the end of the project. We will not reimburse on that percentage, the 5% retainage or the 10% or whatever you agreed upon, until the project is complete and you guys show that you reimbursed the contractor. And then the certified amount due. A tip, if a pay app is provided for a reimbursement request, include the schedule to identify which costs are being claimed. Pay apps by nature are very large and include costs that may not be applicable to your grant. This will speed up the review of your pay app and avoid unnecessary delays in the audit process. So once we get through the RFP and everything is approved on our end, and signed off on by Marcy, Dan, it goes through the stages. You will receive a certification, and it will alert you. And at this point, in order for you to get paid, this form is in Argo under certification. This form needs to be signed, dated, and it's auto-generated after the reimbursement has been audited and reviewed. You will receive an email notification with a link when the certification is ready. It needs to be downloaded, signed, uploaded, saved, and remember to status change this back to us so that we can approve it, and then it will go to the next stage in your RFP. And we get to these very diligently. If for some reason you haven't heard from us, you can always contact us and we will give you the best updated information. So the recap for the reimbursement process, fill out the billing matrix and the spreadsheet completely. Provide invoices, pay apps, itemize receipts, and proof of payment for all costs related to the grant in the same order listed. So in the RFP, you know, if your first cost is concrete, please put the pay app first on the documentation when you scan it and upload it into Argo. That will make it quicker for us to go through, and you can get paid quicker. As a courtesy, we typically can fill out some of the invoice and payment references if there's a few lines. However, if there's a bunch that are blank, we will send that back in order for you to fill out. Proof of payment may consist of checks, electronic funds transfers, procurement card, credit card charges, and detailed cash receipts. Make sure bank records are provided to prove that the charges in question have been paid with sponsor resources. Submit your certification form as soon as possible with the correct amount when you receive notification to complete it. Now we're going to get into advancing grant funds for immediate needs. The advance request process is easy process. There's a form located on the fiscal 2020 resources. It'll say advance request. Please fill out the advance request form. Provide any quotes that support big ticket items with your request, and then upload the documents into the request for payment and submit. And then we will start the advance review process. This is what the form looks like. This will be sort of kind of like a budget that you've identified the big ticket items. And once you submit that, please fill out the certification and the request for advance funds together. After we receive the advance request, we will review the request. An auditor will review the request and check for completeness. If additional information is needed, an auditor will request additional info. Once a complete request is received, it will be sent to the grants director for review and approval. If the director approves, the advance will be sent to our accounts payable for payment. We are at advance fulfillment process. After the advance has been issued, immediately after advance funds have been utilized, documentation should be submitted to fulfill the advance. The documentation submitted must cover the entire advance document. So in order, if you want to submit multiple advances, the first advance has to be completed. So that includes the RFP, the advance request forms, the director approval, and fulfilling that advance. Then you may be able to submit another advance. So take care of your first advance with the documentation as quickly as you receive the invoices and the pay references. The documentation submitted must cover the entire advance amount. The advance amount must be fulfilled before a new request for payment can be initiated. And once the advance has been fulfilled, you may request another advance. And here is a slide for tips for success. Submit requests for payment in a timely manner. Best practice is to submit at least one request quarterly. Organize the supporting documentation in the same order listed on the matrix, with proof of payment immediately following each proof of cost. Remember to save after uploading the supporting documentation. And that's a tip is even when we're working, we have to save every 5 minutes or you will lose all the information that you've been working on. So please make that a thing to do, is save as much as possible. Remember to status change when submitting the RFP and after uploading signed certification. Utilize the Argo 2020 resources available. And if you need help, please call us before submitting a partially complete request. And we're here to answer any questions. I know we went through it very quickly. If you have questions after the presentation, you may contact myself or Marcy. We can leave our contact information in the chat if you'd like. Okay, take that as a no. And at this time, we're going to break for 10 minutes. And if you have any questions, we're going to break for 10 minutes. Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're back as well. In case you're curious, that's Lasker Park swimming pool on the right that you're looking at, and Mission County Park in Bear County on the left. So we're looking forward to updating our next presentation with some great pictures that we take from some of these grants. All right, I think now we're at the point where we're going to have some other local park team members jump on, and we're going to cover your programmatic roadmap. Well, I wanted to call that your roadmap to success, but I was told that was kind of cheesy, so forget I said that. All right, before we get into the roadmap, I'd like to introduce everyone to the local park team. These are the folks that I'm get the privilege of working with every day. They will all bend over backwards to ensure your project is completed successfully. So Andrea Garcia, I'll just start at the top there on the left. Andrea Garcia is our grant coordinator for the Rio Grande Valley. And so we do administer grants geographically. For the most part, there will be a few exceptions on some of these directed grants just because we didn't want to give half of them to Kara and half of them to Jade. So we've split them up a little differently, but generally speaking, if you're located kind of south of San Antonio in between Corpus Christi and Eagle Pass all the way down, Andrea would be your grant coordinator. Crystal Locke is our team lead. So in addition to overseeing a lot of our active grant and agreement workflows and processes, Crystal also administers grants in the Central Texas region. So think kind of the Waco to San Antonio spine and a little further east and west out from there, Central Texas. That's me. Again, my name is Dan Reese. If you are west of Abilene through the Permian Basin all the way out to El Paso, I will be your grant coordinator. Jade Morgan is our newest grant coordinator, and she gets the privilege of working in the DFW area. So I know we've got several representatives from that region on the call today. So Jade's looking forward to working with you on your grants. Kara Escajeda, unfortunately, is not with us today, but she's our Gulf Coast region grant coordinator. Kara does a wonderful job. And so I know the Gulf Coast is well represented on the call today as well. So a few of you may have either Crystal or myself on your grant as your primary point of contact. But again, we'll all follow up with you in the next couple of days with a personalized email introducing ourselves and helping get the ball rolling with you. Marissa Dillick's been with us for a couple of years. She does a wonderful job of working with our partners in the South Plains and the Panhandle region. So if you are kind of north of the Permian Basin region up through Lubbock, through Amarillo, Marissa will be your grant coordinator. Matt Mears will be presenting later this morning, shortly. Matt works really well with all of our partners in East Texas, so east of the DFW region, and then down through the Piney Woods. And then Robert Johnson is our newest team member. While Robert does not administer active grants, he is our stewardship coordinator. So his responsibility is primarily working with previously funded partners to ensure grant requirements are met in perpetuity. So here you will see our roadmap. So the local park team will be taking you on this journey this morning. First, we'll cover the application. Again, we have pared it back significantly from what you're probably used to seeing on a formula grant. So that's good news. And then we'll talk through the agreement, the steps the agreement follows through the agreement workflow. Then we'll get into active grant administration. And then we'll finish with closeout. And again, I want to encourage everyone to type your questions into the chat. And once we get through the closeout portion of the presentation this morning, we'll open the floor up and just have some general conversation. I'd be happy to answer your questions at that point in time as well. So now I'm going to pass the virtual microphone over to Marissa, and she's going to talk through the application. Take it away, Marissa.
Good morning, and thank you for passing the virtual microphone over to me, Dan. As Dan mentioned, I am the grant coordinator for the Panhandle region, but I am glad to see some familiar names this morning from some folks in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and East Texas areas on some projects I have partnered with in those areas. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us and hanging with us after that break. So the first stop on our roadmap this morning will be the application. As Dan mentioned earlier this morning, our target due date for the application will be December 15th, 2025. Now, we understand that everybody has their own timelines. So if you're able to get that done sooner, that's fantastic. That helps us get our portion done sooner. But if you need a little time, maybe past the holidays, we understand that as well. We just ask that you continue to be in conversation with your grant coordinator so we know that everything's on your radar. And of course, if you're looking for something to be expedited, we want to make sure that we're aware and we don't hold you up. So as we go through the application today, we're going to talk about 3 different sections. I'm going to go over technical assistance desk guide, required documents, and required information for the application. And the first thing we'll talk about is that technical assistance desk guide. And Dan, if you're behind the computer, I'll let you go on ahead and switch this screen for me. Thank you so much. So as I said, the first thing we'll talk about this morning is that technical assistance desk guide. And this is designed to be a companion to the application. So as you're completing your application, we envision you having this desk guide next to you and being able to refer to both back and forth. You can find the desk guide hyperlinked to the application in Argo. So once Blake loads that for you and you get into your application, there is an area where you can access it within those forms, or you can go through that resources page that's already accessible right now in Argo, and you can download it from there. This guide provides detailed assistance for each section within the application. So if you get to a question that you're unsure of, you can easily refer to that desk guide for help. It also includes some form templates and step-by-step guidance on how to navigate some of the third-party websites, such as THC's eTrack, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's IPAC report, and how to obtain core coordination. Now, keep in mind, the desk guide was designed for that full-length local parks application, but as y'all should be very excited about, we have pared back the rider application. So it is abbreviated. So everything that you need in your application can be found in the desk guide, but you will have some additional information that doesn't apply in the desk guide. So if you see something and you start to panic thinking that you didn't submit it, just hold on. It's probably not required within our riders application. And we'll talk about required documents next. Thank you. So one of the first pages that you will find in the Argo application is the required documents page. And this is just a great landing page that will give you an overview of all required documents. And you will not be able to submit your application unless all of these documents have been provided. Blake showed earlier the differences between like the notepad or that stop error message on the pages. If you don't upload everything within your required documents, you'll receive that error message and you won't be able to submit. So it's very important that all of these are uploaded for us to review. So the first two documents will be the certification and program assurances and the resolution. We will provide templates that you can use for those two items. So you'll just be responsible for kind of filling in the blanks and getting those signed and returned to us. The next document is the site plan. You will need to provide a copy of your site plan, which includes the park boundary, all proposed elements, and all existing elements. And all of those elements should be labeled on your site plan. I want you to think of your site plan as your first opportunity to tell us about your project. So we should be able to look at it and see everything that you plan and everything that surrounds those planned elements. The next item will be your site photos, and the site photos should give us a full understanding of the park. Labeled photos are even better. Having these photos allows us to orient ourselves at your park and see how wonderful it is and how great your plans are. So having labels, whether they're a description of saying that we're at the northwest corner, or if you have coordinates linking to them, that's fantastic. Either way, just give us a little context, please. At some point, all the trees start to look the same. So if you could just let us know what trees we're looking at, it really helps us get an understanding. The next two items are going to be our ownership documents. So the first thing we have is a copy of the file deed. Now keep in mind, we're looking for the deed, not the CAD printout, not a tax receipt, not a letter from an attorney talking about your ownership. We need a copy of the actual filed deed. So when you provide it to us, we're looking for a volume and page number. We're looking for the top title, and we're looking all the way down for that bottom signature. We want to make sure that all pages are included. And then that deed should also identify the grant recipient as the owner of the property. And then the next ownership document we're looking for is going to be our professionally prepared property profile. It is a mouthful. You will need to work with either a title company or a real estate attorney to provide this report for us. Now, some title companies will call it by a different name. That's just fine. We are just looking for the three pieces of information. We need owner's name, legal description, and any deed restrictions that may apply to the property. Now, this is much less exhaustive than a title commitment or a title report. We've even had people that just submit a letter from a title company on letterhead, just explaining these 3 points. And that's just fine for us. We're just looking for those three pieces of information, which again is the owner's name, legal description, and any deed restrictions. And then from here, we move on to some of our third-party website resources. The first of which will be the floodplain map. Your floodplain map can be pulled from the FEMA website, and we just ask that your park is identified within that map. So there is an option to use FEMA Ferments tool and put in your address, and it'll drop a digital pin on the property and allow you to download that map. But the Ferment does not hold data for all areas. So if your park cannot be found within that Ferment tool, then you'll need to download the PDF version of the map. When you do that, please just make a pin for us, whether that's an X or a check or a circle, however you want to identify that. Please just let us know where your park is within that greater map area. The next item that we are requesting is either correspondence or clearance from the Texas Historical Commission. And that can be obtained using the Texas Historical Commission's e-track system. Now, this is different than just searching the historical sites atlas. You will need to log into, or you'll need to go to the THC website, create an account or log in, and upload project information such as your project scope and site maps. And then you'll need to wait 30 days for a response from THC. This correspondence from THC will determine if an archaeological survey is required for your project. Very important for us to have this information. Keep in mind, it does take 30 days for a response. We are looking at about a 2-month window right now for that target application date. So if you don't have a response from THC yet, we ask that you upload the correspondence, including that e-track confirmation number, and then provide us the correspondence from them, their response, when it becomes available. And then the last required item is the IPAC report. To obtain an IPAC report, you will need to visit the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services website. You'll need to define your project area and generate a detailed list of potential threatened or endangered species. This list auto-generates. So you'll just need to go in and define that project area, and then it'll tell you everything that is relevant to your park area. Now, keep in mind, all of this detailed information about all of those different requirements, including those step-by-step guides for FEMA, THC, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services tools, are included in the technical desk guide. So should you get tripped up on any of this, please refer to that guide. It'll give you step-by-step instructions. And if by any, for any reason, it doesn't answer your questions, then please reach out to your grant coordinator, and any of us would be happy to walk you through those steps. And then after the landing page with all of these required documents, you will find a subsequent page to complete some basic project information. Again, this is an abbreviated application, so we're only asking for minimum information within these forms. I am going to touch on just a few of the application sections, starting with the scope of work. So the scope of work is broken down to your proposed and your existing elements. If we say the site plan is your first opportunity to tell us about your project, this is your second opportunity to tell us about your project. Within the scope of work, there's a question that'll ask, what are the proposed elements? We want to see everything that you're planning. And then there's a section that asks for existing elements. We want to know everything that is currently on site, even if it's something that we are replacing. So for instance, if your proposed plans include a playground, you'll have an opportunity to say, we currently have a playground, however, we are planning on replacing that equipment. All of that should be included in your scope of work. And then the next opportunity to tell us about your project is in the budget. And I've included a snippet of the budget page here for you to reference. This is taken directly from the Rider application in Argo. Our budget is broken down into 3 categories. We have professional services, land acquisition, and construction. Professional services will include any services that you are outsourcing that is not construction. So I want you to think of these as jobs that are completed behind a desk, not at the job site. So we're going to think of maybe a consultant or an engineer or an appraiser. All of those fees can be included up in your professional services. The next area we have is land acquisition, which will include the sale price of any parkland that you are acquiring. Now, if either of these categories do not apply to your project, you can just leave them blank. That's totally fine. The final section is the construction category, which is where the bulk of your award will be spent. In this section, you will want to provide a thorough explanation of what is included in your project. We don't want you getting in the weeds in this. You don't need to break it down too far. We just need enough information to fully understand your plans. So for instance, if your plan included a splash pad, you could just include splash pad. We don't need to see the recirculating system and the buckets and the spray guns and all of the different elements that would be included in the splash pad. Just let us know that a splash pad is being planned. Okay. And then to the right of this are columns, which include the number of units and the cost per unit. You can use these as applicable. So for instance, if you were planning to include some shade structures, it would be wonderful for you to let us know, we're going to include 4 shade structures. This is the cost per unit, and we'll auto calculate that total cost for us. But if you are just looking at installing, say, a splash pad again, you can just do a lump sum. So it would just be a splash pad line item with a lump sum unit and then a lump sum amount. You don't need to break it down. And this will also be helpful come time for you to start requesting reimbursements. Daryl mentioned earlier, it's helpful to link your invoices to the elements. So if we can kind of bundle that to just a splash pad line item, it'll help you down the line as well. Okay, now at the bottom of the page, there is a section for the total grant requested that will auto calculate, and that section will need to match your award amount to the dollar. So please make sure it's not over or under. We don't want you leaving money on the table, and we are not accounting for any overmatch. So that number needs to match exactly. Now, after the budget, you will have an opportunity to elaborate on any of your accessibility or conservation components within your project. And this is a great opportunity where you can tell us about that state-of-the-art, all-inclusive pump track that you're planning, or some habitat restoration you're really excited about. Please share those details with us. We want to be really excited about it as well. And if your project does not include any above and beyond features, that's fine. Please let us know how you plan to meet those minimum requirements, such as ADA and ABA requirements. And again, these sections are abbreviated. So those of you who are familiar with our local parks application will probably immediately notice that this is a shortened section from what we typically request. And then the final section I want to touch on for the application is the environmental information. And this section is extremely important for our team of internal biologists that will be reviewing your application. This section will ask you to describe the existing environmental conditions of the site, and there will also be an environmental impacts table that must be completed. Again, this is a great time to refer to that technical assistance desk guide if you need any help understanding those sections or navigating any of the third-party websites. As you complete your impacts table, you will need to refer to some third-party websites. Some of those you've already done with THC and IPAC and the floodplain map, but there'll also be some additional ones such as the soil map and wetlands map. As you use those documents and refer to them within the impact table, we ask that you can please provide them to us. It helps our process with the internal biologists go a lot quicker if they can see the information that you're referring to. Going back to that initial landing page with all of the required documents, there are some sections within there that have suggested documents or other. Please upload those documents there. It helps us pass those along to our internal biologists, and then they can expedite their review, which will ultimately help us expedite issuing your agreement. So I want you to, think that the more complete and robust application that you provide to us, the quicker we can issue an agreement to you. Speaking of agreements, then the second stop on our roadmap today will be agreements. Our target due date internally is to issue the agreements April of 2026, and that will largely depend on how quickly we receive required documents from you, right? The first of which being the application. So the quicker you can get us a complete application that has all of the attachments, a site plan with all of the labeled project elements, a correct deed, professionally prepared property profile, all of those required documents make up a complete application. So once we have that complete application, your grant coordinator will reach out to you and request your TIN and direct deposit forms. And those will be uploaded directly to Argo. And I believe Blake and maybe Daryl as well touched on the project elements tab within Argo, showing the different symbols of the red X and the caution triangle. You'll want to go in there, hit edit, upload your documents, save them, and then our contract specialists will review those forms. The final piece of information that we need to execute, or excuse me, to issue your agreement are your points of contact within Argo. So we are looking for 3 different points of contacts to have accounts in Argo and linked to your organization. The first person we need is your official point of contact. That person will be named in your resolution and will be responsible for signing the agreement. The project coordinator and the fiscal contact can be decided internally, but they must be an employee of your organization. So I understand a lot of people tend to work with a hired consultant. We can keep the consultant in communication with what's going on with the project and things that we're requesting. However, we cannot put a consultant on the grant agreement. So please make sure that you have 3 people from your organization in Argo linked to your organization. Once we issue the grant agreement, you will have 120 days to sign it. From the date that it is signed, you will have 15 days to return it to us. And Blake had touched on it earlier within Argo, that you'll be able to log in, download that PDF version of the agreement, the attachments, sign them, scan them, and re-upload them to Argo for us. And we will be notified of those status change steps. So we'll keep track of it along the way. Once we have that agreement in hand, your project will then be moved to active status. And Matt will tell you more about what you can expect from your project when it is in the active project phase.
All right, thanks, Marissa. Change our slide here. All right, so I'm Matt Mears. I'm one of the grant coordinators on the local parks team, and I was lucky enough to meet some of y'all in the DFW area for some of these projects, and was glad to see some of y'all were able to join us today. And so I'm going to talk about our process for managing the grant when the grant comes active. And so that means the agreement is signed, and we've got this window of time between when the agreement is signed and when you actually get out there and break ground after getting a notice to proceed. And so there's a few things that start to happen during that time. There's a few things that we collect during that time that we'll need in order to issue that notice to proceed. And so we'll cover quarterly status reports, which will start to be requested at that point. And then we'll talk about some of the documentation that we collect before construction can start. And that's made up of 2 components. So there's standard tasks. These are tasks that we ask of all the recipients of these grants. And then there's what we call project specific tasks. And so those will be a subset of pre-construction tasks that are only going to be relevant for certain projects. And then when all those things in item B there, pre-construction project elements are collected, we'll talk about the notice to proceed with construction. So first up, quarterly status reports. And so these are generated and requested via Argo. And so that happens once the grant agreement's signed and uploaded in Argo, your project goes into an active project status, and that sort of triggers the system to request these reports. I think Blake talked about some of that. And so they're due, so they're requested at the end of each quarter of the calendar year, and then you have 30 days to get those filled out and submitted. And so the way that works out is that they're due the 30th of January, April, July, and October. So kind of a month after the close of each quarter. Again, they're submitted via Argo, and so it's a form in Argo that you'll fill out. There's a few questions there that'll kind of prompt you to provide us with information about how the project is going. One of the most important things that we look for is a list of the actual construction items. These are the items that are listed out in that line item budget that you'll provide that Marissa talked about. And we ask for each of those with kind of a percent completion. And so this just kind of gives us a snapshot of the construction progress. And so we want to know which items have you started, which are kind of, in process, which are done. And then there's another question in the QSR form that asks about delays. And so if you've had any kind of major or minor delays come up, maybe there's weather that's preventing you from progressing with construction, or, maybe you've had design revisions that have kind of made it take a little bit longer than you expected. We ask about that. And then lastly, there's an opportunity to upload photos with these reports, and we love that. We like to see what's happening on the ground, particularly once construction has started. And so that's another thing about this. The QSRs will be requested as soon as the project goes active, and that means the agreement has been executed. And then they're requested throughout the life of the grant until the grant closes out. So for the first few, you might still be pre-construction. And so your budget items that we ask you to list out with completion, it might be all zeros, and that's okay. You can just say you're still in design. And then moving on to the next item. So these are pre-construction project elements. I believe Blake talked about the project elements form in Argo, and project elements are what we call a set of required documents. There are documents that we need to see, review, approve before we can give you the green light to move ahead with, bidding the project out, starting construction. And there's a set of those that are required for all the grants. We call those the standard tasks. And there's another set that if we encounter certain conditions with the project, we're going to trigger those items. We call those project specific. And so those are only required as relevant. And just want to draw your attention to these two lists. So we're going to cover each of these items. In the lighter blue section on the left, these are the standard tasks. And there's a little exclamation point icon on the top corner there. That's going to be your visual cue in the next set of slides to know that those are required for everybody. And then in the darker blue section, those are the project specific tasks. We'll talk about those. There's a little set of 3D glasses there, and that's going to be your cue to know that those are going to be case by case. You may not have to complete those. And we'll talk about sort of how those get triggered under what conditions. And so first up, this is a standard task, so required for everybody. And this is going to be a requirement to register the project with the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. And this is related to gaining compliance for accessibility. So ADA, architectural barriers, regulations. And so once you register the project with TDLR, that's going to kick off a review process with a accessibility specialist. Short for that is a RAS, R-A-S. And so you're going to go through this process of reviewing design with the RAS, making sure that you're reaching compliance with accessibility regulations. And then, so sort of parallel to that, we have our own requirements. And so that would be just proof that you registered the project. And so you're going to have, in one hand, you're going to be navigating this full compliance process through TDLR. And then in parallel with that, we're just collecting that documentation to say that the project's been registered. And then in most cases after that, we're not really tracking that process, but it's going to be continued with TDLR. And, eventually that will result in a final inspection report with the RAS. And so you're kind of meeting all your TDLR requirements there. There might be cases where we would request a copy of that final inspection report. And that could be if there were some kind of extra considerations with your design. Maybe a few changes had to be made for accessibility, or we were able to identify some concerns and report those back to you. Some kind of extenuating circumstance where we just want to see that the process was closed out. And I would say that's probably a rare case where that would happen, but it's possible. For the most part, once it's registered and you submit that proof of registration in Argo on that project elements form, we'll consider that that item to be closed out for our purposes. And so the next item is stormwater permitting for construction. And so this is related to regulations through TCEQ. And so all projects are required to comply with stormwater general permitting regulations for construction, unless you're exempt. And so there are considerations around the impact area of the construction site. If you fall under a certain threshold, it happens to be 1 acre. And that could mean that you're exempt from the stormwater permitting process. And, if the project's impact area is bigger than that, then you may be required to get coverage under that general TCEQ permit. Either way, we require some documentation. So in the case where you are required to gain coverage under that general permit, we'll ask for documentation about that. So some form of documentation showing that you've achieved coverage under that stormwater general permit. You've gone through the stormwater pollution prevention planning process. If you're exempt because of that acreage threshold, your project's under 1 acre, then we might just require a statement justifying that, saying, our project area is less than 1 acre, therefore we're exempt from TCEQ. And so we'll just file that statement. It could be in the form of a letter in our records to say that, you check that issue out, you're exempt. Okay, so moving to construction plans and specifications. This is an important one. We're still in the standard tasks section here. So required from everybody. And so this is where we actually see, what's going to happen on the ground. What do your construction plans actually look like? And so kind of the design stage that where we ask for this set of documents would be when the plans are done, like they're ready to go to bid. So they're 100% complete, they're signed, they're sealed by the architect or engineer. They're ready to be issued. And so that's when we request, or rather that's when we accept the construction plans and we review them. And what we're looking for is just that the items in the construction documents match up with what's in the grant budget, what's in the grant agreement, just to kind of see that one-to-one relationship. Like, okay, this is what they said they're going to do. This is what they budgeted for. There it is on the plans. In some cases, you may not be kind of going through this full design process and planning to put it out for a competitive bid. You might have items that instead you're procuring through a purchasing cooperative like buy board. And so in those cases, we can accept in lieu of full construction documents, like cut sheets from vendors. This could be for like playground equipment, for example. And so that's something that we'll accept via that project elements form, review, compare to budget, approve, and then move on to the next one, which is construction methods and procurement documentation. So we're still in standard tasks here. And we've got two kind of scenarios up on the screen here. There certainly could be other ones that are not necessarily shown that are totally fine and compliant. But these are the two that we probably see the most commonly. And so on the left, we've got the design, bid, build, procurement process. And so there's certain documentation that we would expect to see in those cases where that's how you're going to procure construction contract. And so we would ask for, through that project elements form, an invitation for like proof that you've publicly advertised the bid. And then kind of, once you've collected and evaluated the bids, this would be a like a bid tabulation sheet, documentation around that process. And then lastly, kind of a signed construction, contract, the actual contract that the contractor has signed. And then if, just a small note, if you have not selected the lowest bid, then that should include just some justification on why that is. And then in the pane on the right there, another scenario that we see is one I just mentioned a minute ago, the purchasing cooperatives like buy board. We've got a different set of documentation that we'd collect in that case. And so this would be some kind of document that gives your entity or local unit of government authority to purchase via a cooperative. And so most cases we see like a council resolution, and so that would just contain language saying, if it's City of Arlen, the City of Arlen's authorized to make purchases via cooperative. And then the second item would be an agreement between the entity and the cooperative. And so this could be like a joint use agreement. And then lastly, we'd want to see if you're purchasing via cooperative and then you actually sign a contract with the individual vendor. We'd want to see that as well. And so for all these items, the point at which these will be important for you to get uploaded would be after we've reviewed construction documents. And so you don't want to put your 100% complete construction documents out for bid before we've had a chance to review those. We wouldn't recommend that because our review might sort of bring up revisions that could be required. It's not very common, but it happens. And so we want to work through all that before it goes out to bid. And so moving on, we're getting real close to kind of when construction gets kicked off. We've got another requirement for putting a temporary sign out at the construction site just to identify the project. And so there's a few requirements that kind of form like a template for what we want to see on the sign. There's a certain size we like to see, like 4 by 8 feet. And this is similar to if you've received a local park grant, we have a similar requirement, but there's different language on this one. And so this is just a draft. I wouldn't like copy and paste this necessarily right now. I think once you get to this stage, we'll have sort of a finalized template for you. And then of course, we're asking you to upload a proof of that so we can approve it. We'll make sure the language matches with what we expect to see, and then we'll approve it. At that point, you can go out and purchase a sign, install it at the construction site. So what we want to see is just the draft before you do that. Okay, so we've moved into the 3D glasses section. This is project specific tasks. This is things that come up on a case-by-case basis. They don't come up for all projects, but when they do come up, they're very important. And they are still things that we want to see before you go out there and break ground. And so this screen shows a set of, it's not an exhaustive set, but it's a set of special compliance tasks that might come up. And I think most of these are related to some kind of federal regulation. And so just to name a couple scenarios to kind of give you an idea of when these things might come up. So we require that the project is reviewed by Texas Historical Commission just to get kind of a determination of like, is there going to be a potential impact to some kind of cultural resource, archaeological resource? In a lot of cases, they say, oh, it's already a park, it's already been disturbed. There's not a high likelihood of that. But sometimes they say, okay, in order to ensure that we can maintain Section 106 compliance, we need to see an archaeological survey. And so there's kind of this this continued process where you've got to go out and do an archaeological survey, provide that back to THC, then they review it and give you a final determination. And so when that happens, we will trigger another project element in Argo, and we will collect that record of the archaeological survey and like a final determination from THC once that's done. And so that's one example of a thing that could come up. Another one would be, Marissa mentioned that the project is going to be reviewed by our agency's biologists for kind of environmental considerations. One thing that comes out of that sometimes is if they think there's going to be some kind of impact to jurisdictional waters. And so that could bring up Section 404 considerations. And at that point, we'll ask that you coordinate with the Army Corps of Engineers and then provide back to us a determination of, it could be that you don't need a permit, or it could be that you did have to go and get a permit, and we'll want to see documentation for that. Those are just kind of two quick examples of the special compliance tasks that come up. There's others here on the screen, and we're here to help with that. When it does come up, we'll explain kind of what we need to see. We'll refer you to those agencies where you can make sure we get compliant with those items. Another thing, this is an easy one. If your project includes some kind of interpretive signage, being that we're a natural resource management agency, we kind of have an interest in making sure that content in interpretive signage is aligned with our agency's mission around natural resources and cultural resources specifically. And so if that's a part of your project, which we'll know from the budget, the application that you filled out, then that's an item we would trigger as a project element. We just want to see a proof of that interpretive signage and just make sure that everything looks accurate. The interpretive value is there. It's relevant to TPWD's mission. And so the upload there in the project elements form is just kind of a proof of the design there for the interpretive signage. And then, so this is the last project specific task. This would be if your project includes some landscaping and you're going to be planting some plants out there, trees, other landscape plants. Again, we're conservation agency, and so we want to make sure that the plant material being installed on your site is native and appropriate for the region. The way we do that is by collecting some kind of planting plan, landscape plan, a list of, items from a nursery that you plan on purchasing. And so we'll check those species to ensure that they're native and appropriate to your region. There's an exception if your project includes improvements to ball fields. You can install non-native grass. Common one we see is Bermuda grass. So that's the only case where a non-native would be acceptable. And so one resource that we commonly recommend if you're looking at plant lists and evaluating what types of landscape items you want to install, we recommend the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center's plant database. And so there's a URL there, wildflower.org/plants. And so you can go there, search by common name or scientific name, and pull up a list of plants and then verify their native region if there's questions about that. And of course, if you want to run a list by us, we're happy to do that, before you finalize your plans. And so the item we ask for in the upload there is just like a landscaping list, plant list, landscape sheet from your construction documents, something like that. Okay, so we're getting there, y'all. We are item C here in our active, our number 3 stop on the road here, active. And this is notice to proceed with construction. So all your standard tasks, pre-construction tasks have been done. If you had project specific tasks, those are done. So we've hit this kind of a finish line. It's kind of when you also start to make things happen on the ground. So it's kind of the beginning as well. And so with all those items approved, we will issue a notice to proceed with construction through email. This is when it becomes pretty critical to stay on top of those QSRs so we know what's happening on the ground. And then this is when it becomes critical to take care of some of those fiscal tasks that you heard about earlier this morning. So initiating and submitting reimbursement requests. And then just a note there, if you do pursue an advance payment, the notice to proceed with construction should have been already issued. All right, so I'm going to bring us through to the end here. Stop number 4, close out. So construction's done. So let's see. So I think I've got some wires crossed here on the slide. So what I'm going to do is click over to this one. I think this is the one I'd rather show. And so closeout process. Construction's done. Reimbursement request, you've submitted all of them. You've requested 100% of the grant. There's a critical piece where if a final inspection, which means our staff going out, checking out the site, making sure the stuff that's in the grant agreement has been constructed. If that hasn't been done yet, we will retain 5% of that total grant. But then that's cleared once we get out there and do a final inspection. So what that means is it's critical when you're finishing up to let us know so we can go swing by, take a look, make sure everything that's in the grant agreement is on the ground. And then we're clear to release all the grant funds. And then, so with those done, final inspections done, you've been totally reimbursed. We can, from a programmatic perspective, we can close out the project, and that's the end of your journey as a grant recipient with our program. And so that was a lot of information. Again, we're here at any point that questions come up. I'm sure once you start working through this, things are going to occur to you that maybe aren't just yet, and that's okay. Reach out to us. But at this point, I want to turn it over, open the floor up for questions, and we'll do our best to get you an answer.
Sorry, can we just unmute and talk?
Yeah, if you want to unmute, feel free to turn your camera on if you'd like. But yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So just for instance, on a project we just finished, Kaufman City Lakes, it says closeout assessment required on the current status. So I know we've already had our inspection and everything's been issued. So I guess I'm curious, does that mean that we're done, or does that mean there's still something required?
So, and I don't have the details on that project specifically at the moment, but in those cases, there's so that's kind of our stage where the project is done, things are constructed, and we're just collecting any documentation, any required documentation that is like still kind of pending. So there might be a project element that we just need to get before we can move that project to fully closed out. And so in those cases, you'd want to contact your grant coordinator just to pull that up, see what's missing, if anything, and then there might be something that we ask to be uploaded. We'll get that approved, and then we can move that forward to close out. Anything
Cool.
y'all want to add on that?
No, that covers it.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I see a message from City of Longview. So yeah, I'll get in contact with Scott there. So I see that question about project must go through construction phase to be accepted. Planning studies alone won't be funded.
Yeah, so I'll pick that one, Matt. Morning, Megan. So we didn't really talk about the scopes of the projects too much. I intended to cover that earlier, sorry. We don't really have any specific information in terms of what your project scope is. Typically, these are all for construction and then any kind of professional services related to that project, that construction project. But there's some flexibility. So if you're unsure of what needs to be, and this is for everybody, if you're unsure about what needs to be included or what should be included in your project scope, we would recommend that you reach out to the elected official that was responsible for securing your funding, and just make sure that whatever you're including meets the intent, the original intent of the rider. So typically, for Megan, planning studies aren't eligible, but we may have some flexibility there. So it may be better to discuss that individually offline.
Thank you.
You bet. And again, as a reminder, as Matt said, this is not your only opportunity to ask questions. So if you think of something once we get off, or as you're kind of making your way through the application or the construction aspect of your grant, we're here to help. We're your partner on this, and so we'll do everything we can to answer all your questions along the way. And for Tiffany, yes, we will make both a recording of this morning's presentation as well as the slide deck available. We'll keep this meeting chat open, in fact, in Teams. And so if people want to continue putting questions in here, if they apply to the whole cohort here, we'd be happy to keep this active and respond. But the recording will be available, and then we'll collect all the questions as well as our responses and make those available as well. Good morning, Elizabeth. Yes. In fact, Elizabeth, I'll be your grant coordinator for you guys. So if you'd like to give me a call later or shoot me an email, we can set up a time to meet.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering all our questions throughout the day as well.
Absolutely. We're excited to partner with you again.
Absolutely. We are too.
All right, so I think we're well ahead of schedule, which is great news. We were thinking this may run a little longer, so again, we're here to work with you. So we appreciate everybody taking time out of your day to join us this morning. And we look forward to working with you all and seeing all your great local park projects completed. So with that, we're going to end the presentation this morning, and we will all communicate with you soon. Thank you very much.